Second by Joel. Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
I'll abstain. Make a motion to approve June 7th, public and non-public sessions 1, 2, 3, and 4. as written.
Any discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Were any of those minutes?
Do not, what did you say?
So next we have meeting minutes on June 14, 2020.
Make a motion to pass June 14th, public and non-public 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
These are ours.
It is for you guys. I think the most that we've had is 9. Doesn't mean you need to try to break it anytime soon.
No, none of those were received. Any discussion on the motion? Let's see, all in favor?
Aye.
We have all minutes.
I
Not
love
listed.
We talked briefly, the video of the last minute meeting. I have had questions if that's going to be put up on the website.
That is the plan.
Okay.
Yep.
And how are we working out for future?
As of yet, I have no nibbles on the position. I have a couple of people who are trying to clear schedules to at least give me a night here or there, but so far that hasn't happened. And when we get back into the school year, I may be able to train some superintendents.
How have we listed?
Videographer, Monday nights, and.
But it's listed on,
It's on the website, I believe it's on jobs, and I think Cheryl also listed Arthur. But I will double check. Yeah. Arthur's on vacation.
right.
I've offered it to them right now, there's nothing available.
Public eyes on those names. I think it's temporary.
Yes, I mean, I'd like to see it happen, whether we can get something done on the schedule. It's not, I'll look at the advertisement.
Yeah, both of the Chromebooks, the laptops. The first wave to those who are here, and then getting the rest ready to box. As is this.
So at least for a temporary amount of time, they'll be recorded and they'll be transposed and posted.
Right.
Okay. So
Would you like to look into at some point, I know I've seen the town districts do it where they literally install a 360 camera there, this is permanently here, and you just have to pay for it. And that way you flip a switch, and the way they do it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, certainly like to look at the car.
That would do for the recording, but not necessarily the broadcast.
Right, right, right. I think, you know, one of the complaints we hear at times is the audio. You know, sometimes, it's mostly audio, even if people are trying to listen, and there's paper noise, pencils, and sounds. It's one of the big pet peeves. Watch the camera.
humming in the background, the oldies. How's summer school going?
It's going well. I know that at least for the high school as of Friday, I want to say we had, Thursday it was 13. I think we have a few more as of Friday who have finished their competencies for the classes they were doing. Some had more than one class, but once they finish that, they're finished and they can move on, either go to the next class that they're working on or be done and go home. And so we're getting kids that have recovered their credits and are moving forward. So that's been exciting to watch, and we've been able to tailor it this year. Say, okay, here's where you are, here's what you need to finish, here's what you're missing, go and work on individualized plans for the kids, and it's working really well.
Do we have any seniors? Finish stuff. Competency.
I would need to go back and look at the list, and I'd rather not speculate on it.
No hiccups.
So far, there've been no hiccups. I mean, nothing is perfect, but it's gone very well. We've got a few that I'm watching closely to hope that I can get them to the next grade level for next year, but we'll talk about that more.
My last one is mainstay. Our mainstay.
We actually met the last one. The other, initial overview of what's going on. They'll be in next week to start the actual file now. They do a lot of background stuff, got a lot of information from that. So it's been, they actually gave us, on the front, they actually gave us some dates already.
Hoping to keep them moving because we're gonna need IT when we start doing
You aren't kidding.
learning management.
Well, it's not start doing. I'm already on it. We can't wait until the fall and everything getting up and going. I've been meeting with Otis, working on getting the learning progressions together. Kathleen and I will be, introduce our new curriculum director, Kathleen Schoen. She and I will be meeting with them sometime this week. I was thinking it was tomorrow, but I've not heard back. To just kind of look and see what our other options are for formatting, and then I've already sent them the bulk material. I've been spending a lot of time with CSV files, and hopefully we can get that rolling.
Monday, August 16th is when they're planning on presenting our findings, report delivery.
To us.
Well, to
Us.
us.
Okay.
And then
And then to you.
next meeting to you.
Well, you said present.
Thanks.
Anything else on old business?
I'm done.
I had a question. Last meeting we were talking about, Larry's here, about putting out this part-time position or a summer seasonal position to help in the groundskeeping.
It's in, the job description is in the folder. It did not get on the agenda, but the job description is there. If you want to take it up tonight, that would be great.
Definitely, I think we should.
Okay.
So what do you think, we want to take that up right now?
That would be up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, let's take it up right now.
Has Larry seen the job description?
Larry helped you write the job description.
That's the answer. I wanted to get.
Actually, I would say Larry wrote it. I tweaked a couple of words and put it up in the folder.
So Larry's got too much time in his hands.
No.
We've got more than
Yeah, he actually wrote it while mowing the field.
He's dictating into it now.
That
I read through it. It's a lot of it's boilerplate as far as I can see, but the most important one is always and any other duties that are assigned by.
Catch all.
That's there, yeah.
Think of anything else to throw out here, we'll do it.
So I'll make a motion to approve the job description as
here 24 hours per week. And I know we may have had some discussion on salary range, but did we set those parameters for you guys? Or we were going based upon?
I
I
think
thought you
we-
were gonna have a conversation with,
with, we had to get this part done, we haven't gotten quite that far yet with the union, but I think probably
Okay.
it's
So
gonna
that- yeah,
run
that's
roughly
right.
where we were.
That's
So-
right, that conversation you have.
And with that, do you want that to come back here, or just go forth and do? I'm not gonna,
Pretty much established in the contract, I would say.
It is.
Go by what's in the contract.
Yeah, if you guys, I mean, I would say, to me, only bring it back if you feel that you couldn't resolve it. If you find it's reasonable and it fits where you think that this person should be, I'm fine with it.
I don't anticipate that we're gonna have any pushback there.
Do we have any waiting list from some of the ads we pushed before or whatever?
We have crickets.
No, so, I guess the only thing I'd put out there for food for thought is I'd like it as a union position. If we get stuck, maybe research the feasibility of a contractor. We've got a couple in town. Cost that out and bring that back to us so that at least we can get
No.
somebody moving and getting some help on here sooner than later.
Yeah, if we don't have any immediate response for posting, I think we should probably should start with that. Saying we haven't received any initial response, this is a couple options, so that we don't wait too long before we can get some assistance.
With all this
Prices
rain,
done. Yeah.
with all this rain, you must be,
This rain fields are pretty well.
yeah.
Like softball and baseball fields.
Okay, moving on, new business. So, that one first one, discussion on virtual consortium.
So with the changes that we've had to make in our delivery of services for students who have potential reasons to be out. I'm not looking at, and I know the board has said there's no remote by choice next year, but looking at if we have students who have medical reasons to be out. There is a group of superintendents that has been working together and in negotiations with the state to start a charter school to allow us to be able to do a K-8 remote option. We still would have VLAX for the high school, but VLAX as an elementary option really wasn't particularly robust this year. And wanting to make sure that we had some control over that as opposed to just farming kids out. Right now, we have the go-ahead to do that group charter school with Dover as our fiscal agent. We're in the process of getting the final bits down. There's a good chance that the state may pay all costs up front for the first year, so it will be at no cost to the districts. In the event that it ends up being a cost issue down the road, we're looking at $3,800 per student and then a shared cost of a coordinator for the students so that parents would have a single point of contact. We would be doing our own special ed services, so we would have control over that. And it would be apportioned out based on the enrollment that we have. I believe we are the smallest school that would be part of this. It would be Oyster River, Dover, Somersworth, Barrington, Northwood, and us would be the starting schools. And then there may be additional schools who join down the road. But wanting to get this in place, the other districts are looking to use this potentially as their remote by choice option as well. Knowing that the board had said no to that, I'm looking at this, if I need an additional placement because the alternative placement is incumbent on me to work out if we have a need. There's no way that I could even set up tutoring for a student for the year for $3,800. But to be able to do this and have it, it would be set up and semester's commitment at a time for a student, so it's not a bounce in, bounce out. It's not, this is what we do if somebody is quarantined. This is if someone truly has a medical need and would not be able to be in district, we have an option for our K-8 students.
So where would the staff that's going to staff the consortium come from? And how is that reimbursement?
So
calculated?
it would be done through a contract with the Florida Virtual Learning Academy. But they would be assigning a teacher for our students. So if we have first graders from Oyster River and Somersworth and here, they will together all have the same teacher. And so we have a little bit more contact and control too of where that comes from, what that looks like. We have quite a bit of latitude as to the number of students we could have as a group. We have to start with a minimum of 100, and with the other schools, it doesn't look like they're going to have any problems doing that, and the few seats that I would need would be there.
So what would your estimate be for the amount of students that we would be placing in this? Just a guess.
Right now, I don't anticipate more than probably a handful. You can count them on one hand. But to be able to have that as a fallback if needed. I know that we have some students who went to homeschool last year, maybe not as successfully as parents wanted to, but because of medical issues, they didn't feel they could be here. If we had that other option, that's kind of works on our enrollment numbers, because then there's still our students we're sending to an alternative placement, but there are students, so they count on the adequacy piece. And we have control of what they're getting. So.
I mean, the only other concern that I have is, I'd like to just review and approve the criteria in which we're going to set for someone to qualify.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wondered if there was a set of.
Well, and that's too, for an alternative placement, that's with me to review with the team and to
Right.
do. I'm not going to just send kids to this because somebody said it's just more convenient for us.
Right,
That would
we may
require
have some requests that.
it would
that may
require
fall into that determination.
the meeting of a 504 team to review the needs. I need medical recommendations. It's not just based on a, gee, this sounds cool.
Or, you know, I'm still in fear of COVID and I want to do this.
It
even
needs to be a
though-
medical
Right.
reason.
So the $3,800, is that per year or is that per semester?
I believe at this point it's per year.
So in charter school reimbursement, it's about $8,000 a year.
Because this is an alternative placement,
Yeah.
for us, we don't get the full 8,000, we get the like 37 or so.
So it's close.
It's close,
Okay.
And with the additional startup cost of our liaison and those other pieces right now, it looks like the state will cover it in its entirety for the first
So
year.
what do we have to supply?
Well, at the
Our
point that we
staff.
get the final go-ahead from the state, we aren't so much supplying staff other than special education oversight of any students who are placed there. We would still be running what, like we would be here. And then just monitoring. And so it's a little bit more just making sure that we've got communication going both ways, but we are not supplying staff as such.
So you're saying we don't have, and we're not expecting any additional staff burdens?
Correct.
You like that, huh?
We'll start there.
We'll start there, yes.
I mean,
Be-
especially-
Because it's contracted through virtual,
Right,
through
but the actual,
through Florida Virtual.
the
So it's
actual
their staff.
functioning of this may, with our special ed staff, hopefully it's smooth and doesn't, you know, it's not a.
What it would end up being is that those students would be considered out-of-district placement, and so right now the special ed director is the case manager for out-of-district.
But we're still responsible for the educational program.
Well, yes, that's, the special ed director is that case manager for those students. And so I don't anticipate that it's gonna be large numbers, and we do have some students who have graduated out of our district, so I think it will balance.
So you're looking for a consensus or a vote regarding this?
Right now, I'm looking for consensus. It goes to Dover to vote because they would be the fiscal agents. It will go to their board, I believe, on the 2nd, and then at our next meeting on the 9th, I would bring back for you here's the finalized plan to vote. But just letting you know kind of what's coming and.
No, I'm okay with it. I think it'll be, fill a small meeting.
I like it, particularly the charter school structure and the ability to bring in that revenue to support it when the DOE covers it the first year or not, moving forward, gives us a viable option. My only question to put out to Dover is, investing a lot of money in the learning management system and doing that because of a learning loss. So somehow to bring those charter school grades and progress into our system, just to think about it, so that as we're doing the analysis on how this is affecting us as a district, we have that data.
I don't see that that's going to be a problem. It may take some
Back and forth.
and it may take a little bit of tweaking so that the apples match the apples, but it'll be pretty close.
My main concern is I want to make sure that as we go down this type of program, that our students are getting what they need. And if they're not, or they're falling off that level and going into a learning loss, that they're recoverable.
Well, yeah, we want to determine that sooner than later, so that we have a recovery path, not, oh, this is what happened.
And that's what the LMS is. My only question on it is you mentioned locked into an entire semester. Is there any leeway, let's say a kid goes out and breaks his leg and he can't physically be at our building for 3 weeks or?
It's not going to be a bounce in and out thing on that. So with that, we would be needing to work out something else, kind of probably a combination of synchronous and asynchronous.
We'd be back to the old way of doing business before there was remote.
With the exception of the fact that we're one-to-one, and so students would have the ability to still get into Google Classroom, to still be able to keep up with where things are. It may not be fully synchronous so that we've got cameras rolling at the same time, but they will have much better access than we've had in the past. And tutoring is still an option if we need to go there as well.
The one-to-one just flagged that
Yeah.
memory with me. Last year, we spent a significant amount of federal money on hotspots to get kids to communicate. With the latest round of federal funding, there's funding in there for home internet services for students that qualify for free and reduced lunch.
Right.
So as we're going or looking at potential students for this program, I know Atlantic Broadband is participating in it. I don't know about the other two vendors that cover the town, but rather than fork out $18,000 for hotspots, can we kind of ahead of time look forward and get them signed up for that program so that they're taking advantage of the federal money outside of our district?
We are looking to see how best that's going to work. Not all of the students we have who were taking advantage of that service can access we're still looking to see who else we can bring in to make sure that we're covered. We did have a few that didn't matter what service we brought to them last year. Is, well, we don't have any cell service here. Well, I can't get to that either.
But the program I'm talking about is
No, I know.
the hardline internet.
Right. And so hopefully we'll be able to, not everyone's been wanting to do hardline internet either, but we're working on it.
The challenge too is people are not really signing up for free and reduced, even though, especially since it's free again this year. And that, we're chasing them, we're pushing them, but, getting those people to over the hump to do it.
This may be impetus for them to do it if they're going to receive that service. We will also have applications. We're going to be as a district, we will have a table at the National Night Out next week, next Tuesday. And we will have applications, and if you need to do it paper, take it with you. If you want to come pick it up later, you can do that. If you need help with it, please let us know.
Does that really affect the ADM for?
It tremendously,
You know, I saw the
tremendously.
numbers, wow.
Yeah. And we're not the only, it's a universal problem throughout the state because people don't really have a good reason to fill it out.
Mhm.
It affects Title I, it affects every piece of our, all of the formulas for our title grants.
Which has become a challenge for the legislature right now, is how to balance this all out, with these numbers getting skewed. So, I think it's gonna be
Take the
quite a
number
challenge.
though times 3.
Just fund IDEA to
You realize
100%
it's
would be
funded
much
with
better.
business taxes, right?
Those bad business people.
No, I meant she used to have to triple her business tax.
Just fund IDEA, that'll be nice.
I got some more comments on that subject, but I'll hold it till school messenger.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to classroom supply donation, Valley View. No, Valley View.
Valley View. So, Grace Community Church has made a donation to Valley View. They're calling it their Totes for Teachers program, and they've put together classroom sets of supplies in totes for each teacher at Valley View. They brought things up to Blake today. I'll get the final numbers. It was around $3,500 worth of materials that they brought up. So I'm bringing it to the board. I will have a final number so that it can be formally accepted. Blake was going to be up taking pictures. I didn't catch him to get pictures to share with you today. They'll have them next week.
Well, next week we can show them live on TV.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I've already gotten 2 emails about, where's the meeting?
Still at the high school.
Is that,
We have plenty of seating available.
is that, article just, advisory at this point? Do you need a, you don't need a vote or
So she
anything?
gets a number.
Okay.
So moving on next to school messenger app.
So with the number of calls that have been going out, particularly since the weather has not been cooperating for some of our fundraisers of late, we've had some folks who've been a little bit frustrated with the numbers of calls. And others are like, but I want to make sure I get every single one of those calls and I want them. So what I want people to understand is, while yes, you can call and say, I want this number removed, and sometimes we can see it. We had a business call us today, we want our number removed. I've searched every database we have numbers in, I can't find the numbers. I'm not sure why they're getting calls, but they are. Somebody may be forwarding them for all I know. But there is an app that's available in the App Store, both for under Google Play and for Android and in the Apple Store. It's called School Messenger. I put it up on our Facebook page so you can see what the app looks like. It's a free download. If you download that, then you can go in and you can change your settings of what you're receiving, which numbers it comes to, what time you get calls, when you don't. If you only want emergency calls, you can set it that way. If you never want to get a call and you only want those that go out to email, you can set that. If you change your mind at 2 in the morning, you can change it so that you know whether or not the snow call was made. But that way you have, each individual family has control over what they do with that, as opposed to making a phone call and waiting for somebody to dig through the database to find it. So I want to make sure everybody is reminded that they have that option.
Okay, what have we listed with that as far as a disclaimer regarding personal information privacy that we have no control over? Because if they use an app and they're giving this app whatever information they're downloading.
It goes directly to our database that they've given us the numbers for in PowerSchool.
Right.
Privacy policy, Apple, the developer for both Apple and Google, they require you to put your privacy settings right on that download disclaimer. So if you're retaining any of that data within your database, you have to disclose that. If it's going directly to our server database, then that's
but you're not maintaining it, so you don't have to, disclose it.
So, based upon your experience with these two platforms, you don't have,
You're audited.
you don't have an issue with offering
No, and I
that, without a
have,
disclaimer.
the disclaimer is in the app itself, and I've got both, and all my information's out there without a problem, which it wouldn't be if I had that concern. I'm just looking down to see if I can find out what they're.
Good question, Rich.
Well, I
Disclaimer.
mean,
Disclaimer.
everyone says, oh, we're not gonna sell you data trail, yeah, okay. And just, so why do you get all these calls? Because your data's being sold.
Well, it's because your warranty expired.
Right. And my credit card
Know
bill.
that.
Several times over, yes.
Yeah, my computer's. So, yeah, that was my concern, but people that know more about it than I do are comfortable with it, I don't get it.
And there's no obligation to go that way, but some people feel better being able to see where their settings are and change them themselves.
But unless somebody asks, we are still doing our calls.
Oh, absolutely. That's a very necessary way for us to get information out to the district. But someone may decide that they choose to opt out. That's fine. Or they may say, but I want it to all go to this number that's not in there now. Great. They want a phone that's just for the school? That's their prerogative.
It's time to refresh the whole thing that's out there, you know. We got a lot of new people in town that may not even know it. You know, they registered the kids, they don't know that they don't have to take a call about a dance.
Right, and they can,
Or not
they
a snow
can,
day or
they
late
can list
start.
whether they want just emergency calls, whether they want the general calls. There are non-emergency calls, emergency calls, general calls. So, emergency calls are, you know,
We're in South
What-
London.
well,
No school.
I don't put no school out as an emergency. I put that out as a general because most people look at the weather and know that something's coming. But because the emergency ones will come up with a code on it too, that this is an emergency call. And I try not to freak people out at 5 a.m. But,
Do anyway.
well, okay,
Oh,
I don't
can't-
add
can't
to it.
remember.
I don't add to it.
And if they have questions, like, well, I wanna get the no school snow call, which category do I put
Right.
in?
It's general, and I guess we can talk about where that goes as well.
But here's my concept, and I kind of bump forward to this topic. Watching the predictions for the fall with COVID, it doesn't look pleasant. So one of the things that I'd like to see, either at school opening or prior to school opening, is an orientation with our parents in-house. Let them know how we're dealing with this day to day, what we're looking at for data. For instance, a study came out within the last couple of days on buses. The protocol that we had in places on our buses, they're saying was the correct protocol. The studies that they've done, no major spread, but they're recommending 2 students per seat. So as we go into next year, we had a lot of parents transport last year. Do we recommend that again and explain it why?
CDC is also recommending masks for buses.
State is.
Oh, it's a good recommendation, we'll take $100.
But on the orientation, I think it ties into a lot of things. It ties into the school messenger program. It ties into the Title I and the financial forms that we need. It ties into what we're looking at for emergency protocols, and more importantly, what we're looking to do to sustain that child's education and how we're gonna make better. And we can't do it without that feedback. So we kind of almost said, or what I'm thinking is building by building, we say, hey, we need you in here. 'Cause Valley View is gonna be different than our other schools because of the vaccination. They're saying in September, we may have vaccination for a 5 to 12. So that may help us if parents choose to do it. But I think think the orientation is a smart way of going in it, and I'd like us to be small part of that orientation as well.
We already have Valley View and Henry Wilson are doing open house / orientation on the 30th of August. And the high school typically does the open house a couple of weeks in, but certainly can do the, even just a video, here's the orientation pieces of all those questions that you need to be aware of.
I don't agree with Tim on the point of having some increased information in that orientation. I think this board also needs to set any change to protocols for that.
Of course.
And it's something on our list to do instead of all of a sudden, I did happen to just go to the state website today regarding COVID. You hear a lot of information in the press, like, well, where do we stand? Current cases in New Hampshire are 335. Cases that are hospitalization, I think 24 to 27 in the state. The average new cases is 45 a day, which rolls into that 340 cases, which is like 48 times 7, or some number, whatever. But currently in the school section, and I don't know because we're out of school session.
You cannot use the school data right now.
There was
because it's
there's only 2 towns that had numbers in there. But historically, in this area, they didn't really break it up in Stratford County. They had a little bit different breakup for the other areas. In the area that we were in, I think they only had 27 known cases. So I think right now, I know there's a prediction that we're going to have this huge wave in the fall, but right now our numbers are I think probably, I didn't look at it nationwide, but we're not certainly, I think, going backwards by any stretch of the imagination as far as issues in the state.
At this point, we really aren't. Looking at things for the fall, we have the protocols in place, that we have the tiers already set and planned. If the board is looking to make additional changes, basically you said, bring a plan forward that you
Right.
have, and this is where we're headed. If you're planning to make major changes to that, sooner is better than later, because we want to make sure that we have in-house ready to go if we need to shift. I'm anticipating that right now, if we were to need to change models like we had planned out for last year, we can do that. We've done it. We've been here. We can go there. Yes, desk shields have come down, but they're neatly stacked and accessible, and
They have them labeled to where they came from.
so we can get back to where we have to go. We've started to put some furniture back, but if furniture has to move, we can move furniture again.
For
But
me, I think it would have to be a significant change in our numbers in this state. The other interesting number that I saw, which I would have expected it to be lower, but our current vaccination in the state of New Hampshire is 55% off the state's website. So I think as far as vaccination, I was higher than I expected, because what you hear is, we got to get to that magical 70% before we have enough of this. So I think by September, when more people feel comfortable, maybe doing more research on themselves, that they choose to get vaccinated. So I think that number's going to increase. Will be to 70 by the start of school. I don't know, but I was happy to see the numbers, just at the state website. So I think I'm hoping for not a significant change,
there's another
regardless
call.
of what the doomsayers say.
There's another call next week with the state on kind of where things are going. They've not added any additional guidance. If anything, they've kind of added a little bit more muddled flip-flop. Well, it's this, but it's not that, and we told you not to do this, but you can do it if you want to, and so therefore go forth and have a good year. But I think really the long and the short is they're not going to give us hard and fast, here's what you have to do, at least at this point. If numbers suddenly just exploded, DHHS has already said, we're going to come in and tell you this, but we're not there at this point.
Right, and
So.
I think that we have a pretty good sense of, oh, we need to make a change based upon where we were last year. So, for me, it's not really, I don't really need to, feel I need to rely on somebody way out there to tell us what we need to do when we have cases here. I mean, we lived through it and we said, okay, we've got situations that we had to adapt to and deal with. And I think as a school district, we were very successful in managing that and staying open. And if we follow the same decision-making that we did last year, we can, I believe we'll be able to handle it if there's a swing.
DHHS has said that they are not doing classroom quarantining. They will be, so if there's a case in class, they'll kind of look at the bubble like we were doing toward the end, and kind of know how many feet out, here's the group that may go, but they're not going to take out an entire class if there's a positive or two. They're not looking to do mandatory quarantines for anybody unless they are in a first-person contact within the household, or it's a prolonged first-person contact. That's
So
not just.
So they're removing the, you traveled and now you need to be quarantined?
There is not a,
That's gone with the exception of international travel.
right, yeah, there's not a domestic travel quarantine in there at all.
I mean, that seemed to be more troublesome than just cohort tracing.
They have told us, however, that we should maintain a fairly low bar as far as symptomatic folks in school. So if I have a
You
kid,
drive somebody has symptoms. Yeah.
if I have a kid coming in and the nose is running like a sieve, you need to come get Johnny.
Right.
They don't want them to stay. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
get it.
reasonable.
It may be a cold, but
But
off you go
let-
until
let
we know
us
for
ma-
sure.
Let a medical professional tell us.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
And I know that that's frustrating for parents, but if you see them, going through half a box of Kleenex on the way to school, to run them home. Don't drop them off.
So with that in mind, at one time, prior to us coming out of this, state had talked about getting some quick test kits to the school districts.
So there is that possibility, and we've got to get certified, and we're in process. I've filled out the paperwork to start that process. They've also talked about, and I signed up early on just to kind of test the waters and see where we are, about doing screening tests as well. Basically, they've come out now and said, you're not going to get much bang for the buck. We don't recommend that you go that route, but to have the rapid tests here if we need them because we have someone who becomes symptomatic here. What we don't want is for people to send their kids to school to get tested. That's not, but if I suddenly have someone develop symptoms during the day, I would have the ability, with the parent permission, to
Now,
check
as
and
far
see
as
where things are.
I assume it would only be school nurses.
Oh, it would be school nurses doing that, yes. I have no intention of donning the hazmat suit and doing the swipe.
Who went to that? What is that about the school? Should be doing the left the CVS, bag, watch, told her what to do, put it back in, put it in a pickup bin, and drove off. Called 5 minutes.
Next is the adequacy projections.
So,
Which form do you want to start?
that's what I'm pulling up here to make sure
Is it predicted by the estimate? The real numbers.
we're. So,
The top one.
We are-
15 estimate docs.
So we're not necessarily promised that any of these are going to be solid, but at least some of them look a little better than what we have seen. So as you look at the one that was from November 15th, that was what we based everything on. We were given this as our dire prediction, and
Okay, stop here. Yeah,
Sure.
which one are we looking at?
okay, so if you look at
Is that one, there's 5?
the one that
Yeah,
says 11, 15, 20,
20, that's
that
long.
was the estimate that we used for budgeting.
Okay.
That was the 5,605,594.
605, 594.
Thank you, yes,
Okay.
fighting with my bifocals.
So let's move down to the one that counts, which is the Senate Finance.
So, as you look at the Senate finance piece, it's an estimate. It's not for official use, but it gives us where they are working or looking to take us to. It would be, current law bumps it up some, Senate finance bumps it up a little bit more than that. So
So the two numbers we're comparing are what?
the two numbers we would be comparing, it was the 5 million that was back from November, and now we are looking at potentially 7,272,000 and change, which is significantly better than the 5 million. I think when everything, all the dust settles, that may come down a bit because they are still trying to figure out exactly where they're going to land with the formulas that take into consideration the fact that all of our free and reduced across the state is, it's birdshot. Nobody really knows where it's going right now. But this is what they're projecting for us. It may go down a smidge, but we're going to see considerably more than the 5 million that we were projected to receive.
You want the two numbers?
So if you scroll down in the Senate one to Farmington, Charlie, the first number under current law is $6,622,042.
2020 estimate.
That was the first one, and then we moved to the Senate finance versus current law.
To the second.
Well, realer.
I thought that was on that form.
These two columns on the front.
Also, to remind anybody looking at that form that what we're calling the Senate document has 2 years on it. So stop when you get to the left.
Right,
Review the left-hand side for this exercise.
yes.
But that gives us some foresight into future budgeting as we get into the budgeting season. So can I ask a couple questions? What is, this year's budget, what is our Fund 10 budget? 15, is it?
In FY '22,
Yes, July 21 to 22.
I think.
15,764,329.
15,764,329.
Yep.
Did we have 135,000 out in warrant articles?
No, it was 67, I think we
Well, we
were.
funded a
Because we
bunch.
dropped those down to $1, remember? Most of those dropped to $1. The bus, the social worker, yeah.
It's 50,000 in capital reserve for safety and security.
It's like 13,000 for the robotics.
Yeah.
And the rest were $1.
Okay, so it's 63,000.
Yeah, right there.
Would you?
Do we have, do we know up or down from our June 30th balance on Fund 10, whether that's gonna be that 900 some odd thousand, or is it gonna go up a year, down a year, or are we closer to that number?
Randall's report got up here. We closed out all the POs we needed to. We still have bills to pay, but right now we're at 1.187 million,
Okay, what do you estimate the bills to pay is?
about $187,000.
We've
Give or take
made
3,000.
sure that
Yeah,
million
million's
was
gonna be
there.
there.
The million will be there.
So it's basically right at that.
It should be pretty close to it, yeah. There may be a few things that come in a little bit less. And
I had closed the POs, I still got the filing invoices. So we stayed at 3,000.
The bottom line is, we don't have an exact number, but we're looking at a pretty decent tax bill coming December compared to where we were last year.
yes. better than we predicted, even with the no nib. Which we need to then look at what type of artificial cliff that creates for us for the following year. Because even level funding then, having returned $1 million, it looks like the tax bill will have gone up by $1 million, even if we level fund.
Now,
So,
if we look at the, I'm sorry.
And don't forget the over half a million came back here.
right, well, that's
still,
good.
don't forget the what? Over half a million came back the year before, that pushes it down too, and at some point it's gonna have to, that artificial cliff, has to come back at some point.
That's pretty consistent with every year, because if we look at 3 years of spending, we spent $500,000.
Yeah, so it's been roughly, when you include in the years that we had to return a whole, several
Right,
years worth
yeah.
at once,
Yeah,
it's
do
been
nothing.
averaging in that 5 range.
Yeah, and even in a town side with a much smaller budget, designated fund balance will typically be, when I was a selectman for 9 years, as high as 375 and as low as 250. So that's a
Right.
much smaller
Yeah.
scale budget.
And COVID last year really kept us from being able to spend quite a few things, even though, I know that we did freeze, but we didn't have all of the sports trips that we typically do. So that was personnel, that was gas, we didn't have field trips, we didn't have, there were a lot of pieces that didn't happen that contributed to what we were able to fold back. Continuing to do that every year is going to have a significant impact on what we are able to do long-term to get things shifted. But this was an unprecedented year in so many ways.
Anything else on that topic?
There was a comment, and I looked at it really late last night, that talks about New Zealand is and obviously they set this on 11/15, but there was a comment in one of these documents that said if we have accurate and complete numbers by September 1st, and timely for end of year from the district, they'll give you a much stronger, they're not gonna solidify it until 11/15, but if they have what they need back from all
They
the
can
districts.
give it,
Just the
that's the DOE 25.
Okay.
We won't be able to get our audit completed until, they won't finish everything, because they won't finish the year until October. But they will at least be looking over where we are. In the last couple of years when that's happened, the changes that we've had once they've come in have been negligible. There's always some adjustments, but they've not been significant enough to impact the tax rate. So we should have fairly good numbers. I can't say we're going to have absolute, solid, everything wrapped up in a nice, neat bow by September 1. We're going to be as close as we possibly can.
Yeah, basically, I did find it. Additionally, we've received a question about the timing of the revised adequacy allocation. Although the officially completed F-22 adequacy allocations will be set in October, we will be able to publish an accurate and complete 22 adequacy allocation with the September 1st distribution, meaning when we get ours, distribution, provided we have accurate and timely EOY data from the district.
Right. Well, and the EOY data is in process of going out now.
Right.
And then that DOE 25 is the last piece. I've been certifying reports all week.
So what I'm looking at is if everybody plays by the rules, we may have a stronger
Right.
note by September.
And what we get in November is the adequacy for the next year. What
Right.
we would have in September is the end of what we're going to get for finishing up the tax rate for now.
Right.
And then what we get in November is their best guess of what's going to happen a year from.
Mm-hmm.
So
Charlie, just so you know, on the Senate sheet, best case scenario, 7,272,474. That's what they plugged in for a number. And we used 5,605,594. The difference between those is 1.6 million. So based on where we assumed we were going to be at the 5,606,000, we could potentially be looking at another $1.5 million or more.
Which is $3.
Roughly.
1.5, yeah, 275, 280.
So I don't
I mean,
know
we
that
had
I
a
would.
projected increase, and then we bought some of that down. So.
Right. So I wouldn't anticipate that it's gonna be more than they've given us, Mary. Typically, when they do that, they shave a little off.
You mean the 7?
The 7, right.
I'll take
So-
$1.5 million, they can have the other 156,000.
Very generous of you, Mary.
Hey,
Um,
They'll start there if they hear.
But that is, it's roughly $3, because we're at a little over, yeah, not quite.
And we had 314 on the Article 3.
Right. So,
That
and
was
with,
before the $1 million,
and that was before the $1 million.
So you've got,
which is $2.
right, so you could,
Everything the way it stands right now, we're looking at about a 51 cent per thousand tax decrease, if nothing changes with these prerequisites.
Right. And if this comes through, then we're gonna be in fairly good shape.
and that is without affecting any quality of programming, services, or any of that. I mean, we didn't, with the 1 million, I remember at deliberative, there was some
Well,
concern about
I
that.
wouldn't say that it didn't have an effect. I will say that it did not have as devastating as an effect as it could have because of where we were and what we already weren't able to spend.
Mhm.
I will never say, yep, let's cut $1 million every year because we can
Well,
do
no,
it with no
no.
effect.
No, but
No way.
I distinctly remember a couple of comments about, you cut $1 million, you know, the kids are gonna be coming to school barefoot, things like that, you know. But I don't see a dramatic loss. I mean, the loss that, if we've had any loss of learning, that's what Tim's committee is coming up with, and that really isn't a financial thing, that's kids paying attention, the emotional, I understand.
One-on-one.
And I think part of it too, you know, in framing yes, there has been some change in what has been able to be done through the whole pandemic. But there has been other learning happening, not all of it academic. We do have some credit recovery that is being done for those kids that really struggled through. But there's an awful lot of learning about adaptability and resourcefulness and how to do things differently that did happen. And so
Not only for the kids.
no, in large part for the adults. But the kids learned from what they saw the adults doing and handling and being able to do. And I think that also needs to be part of the discussion. It's not just about loss. There's a lot that was gained through this as well. It just wasn't what any of us thought was going to be written into our lesson plans.
And it's a lot more nebulous. I mean, it's not something you can really.
A lot more of what we do is nebulous than we like to think it is.
Anything else on this topic? Anything else in the business?
In the folder, I put up a little bit in there. This is one that slipped through the cracks with all that was going on, transition, migration, and everything. Basically, it's the same one we had last year. I don't know if you wanted to.
Okay, hold on. My discussion will probably answer all the questions. So Ruth Ellen sent me an email Saturday, and it said that Arthur had asked the guy at the town to include an oil bid. When did he send that?
That was back in June.
Okay.
And I don't have any information on the town.
Right, so I did reach out to Paula today because Arthur's on vacation till the 30th. and they placed their bid.
They have?
They have.
Okay, then we don't have to worry about that.
So, and I think they did it that last meeting,
Okay.
so there were obviously there was some miscommunication or, just lack of follow-up to at least get on the same page.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that is
Then what
basically
we
just
have
our own
here-
bid.
This is our own bid.
So,
Yeah.
so Paula asked me, did I want to be on future communications, and I said, yes, I will follow up with them. I think that it's important for, especially in light of a couple other things that were between the Board of Selectmen and us and them, that we should be copying the chairs on both boards to make sure that it doesn't slip through the cracks, because she, I said, well, this is the first I've heard about it. I mean, from your email. That's why I was
Well,
calling.
no, I brought it up at a meeting or two back because Mary had made a comment that they don't get their delivery the same way because we're commercial nozzles
Yeah.
and they're not, so.
I mean, I look at it as like just another opportunity. I'm not saying we could have got on the same page, but.
We've done it in prior, and the bidders
Yeah.
didn't bid on the town because it was a different delivery for them, and they weren't willing to do it.
Right, but depending on the bidders, it may or may not work. But go ahead, Ken.
So communications on both sides.
I-
Not gonna say that.
No, I-
Town administrator.
No,
I just
no.
wanna,
No,
I didn't dig into it any more than that. Paula goes, do you want me to have, I said, it doesn't matter, it doesn't, I don't need to know. All I want to do is make sure that the chairs, both her and I are current chairs, the stuff that's between the two boards or staff, that they're at least copied on it so they can be aware of, just to remind the question, hey, where does this stand? Because what happens is, we get to a meeting and somebody hasn't followed up because they've been busy, and it just causes more pain or something necessary. So that's my only point that I said to her, but I'll follow up with an email, at least on my side. But
and
as far-
CC me?
No, it'll be going to you. But, also for the town side is at times they're not aware of everything going on either, so this will at least alert them, at least the chairman and chairperson can make sure that her constituents, or my constituents at least, know what's been communicated between the two boards. That's the only I have.
So with that, I guess the
Oh, put
question
back to the
is,
bid.
are we good to put the bid out?
Yep. So by ourselves at this point.
a motion, or you wanna?
Yeah.
Make a motion to submit the bid to the public as written.
Do a second? I'll second. All, discussion.
Is
Do we have a list of who we've been sending it to?
Irving, Dunstan,
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
And we have companies in Massachusetts that are asking to bid.
and this is the typical time for us to go over.
it's actually a little bit later than we've done.
Usually it's about a month,
Just-
2 months ago.
I was just looking at futures today, and like, WTI is at like 72.18.
Crude actually down a little right now, a little bit.
Yeah, you know where WTI is one of the leaders in industry.
But it's intermediate.
Right, they were at 72.18.15 quality spread earlier today. A year ago, those same numbers, we were at 39.93. And you're seeing it at the pumps, but
That's per barrel,
Just-
crude price, is that what you're referring to?
yeah, crude per barrel,
Where
WTI
it
is,
starts.
WTI is
Well, I know,
Midwest.
the numbers she's referring to.
Yeah.
And they also use North Sea crude, which is another gauge.
There's been years when we've been real out
There,
We'll leave it at that.
there have been years that the bid went out in March or April.
Yeah, I mean, typically we see the fuel jump up around the summer holidays, and then come down a little bit after, but I think this year is probably a little bit different, based upon some of the other prices that we see just going higher and higher.
Well, it depends on what commodity you're talking about. Gas goes up because it's tourism,
Yeah.
but that's a whole different, gas is a byproduct of refining crude oil into gallon, but if it goes down, we'll take 40% of what it goes. I guess we'll wait and see what they send us. 'Cause we,
But if we don't ask for that, we're not gonna get it.
right.
But so if she's referring to something that I've not heard of, sliding migration on pricing, that's not in our bid.
It is not.
So if that's something you think we should consider, we would have to put
Well-
that in the scope.
Is that common?
It's also industry-wide, it's known as a not to exceed. So they set the most it will be. And so if we set it at 2 and it goes to 4, we're good with 2. And most of your vendors in the commodity will give you that. But I have seen $2 maximum. If it goes up, you get it at 2. And if it goes down, you get it at $1.50.
Just kind of your home year-long contracts.
It's very similar.
Probably a little too volatile for that to be successful this year, though,
Well,
for the seller. The
well,
buyer works out.
You gotta-
And some of them will quote it based on that, but you can always ask for it as an option. There are some suppliers out there, and, you know, if we're pulling out a WTI, which basically we are in this area, they've got a lot more leeway, they really do.
So why wouldn't we add that as a?
You can add it, yeah, I mean, you could always plug it
They
as
don't
an
pull it, they don't
option.
pull it. I think it would be a good option to see some of the data, and based upon the numbers, it may say something, okay, we saw that, and even if we don't do it this year, we may say, okay, this is something for food for thought, again, depending on how volatile it may not be. But I'd be curious to see what the numbers were.
It's a game I have to play every day.
Would you call it a sliding scale?
Not to exceed it.
Not to exceed.
You were saying sliding migration,
I said sliding migration, but that's
not to
when
exceed
you're.
sliding migration pricing,
And-
as an additional.
And if
Right,
they,
as a separate option.
Right, I don't wanna see them, somebody
I don't wanna
not
see either
quote
or,
a fixed
right.
price, quote that in addition if they want to.
so there's really 3 things. When they give you a fixed price, that's a not to exceed regardless. But there are companies out there that will give you.
It's
a
not
good-
to exceed, but it doesn't drop. That's the
Right,
thing.
that's the normal one, but there are companies that will say that's the most you're ever gonna pay. If it drops by 10%, we'll bill you at 10% less and invoice it at that. So, it's possible. I have enough to exceed with Dennis K. Burke right now. And there have been times when I paid less than, by about $1, less than we're doing. And if it goes down, that's what I pay. But that,
We used that to get Burke in the past, but they did the last few times.
Right.
I don't think, Dennis K. Burke doesn't have the fleet capability to do a joint with the town, because what you're gonna save.
But
if
we're
you-
not doing a joint bid, so
Right,
it doesn't
but-
matter right now.
But it's kinda silly anyway, because I'll tell you, when you add the volume that they're gonna add to try to get a slightly better 2-3 cents a gallon, you're gonna lose that because the delivery system for the town is different than the delivery system for the school. That they have to send a totally different fleet, which means that they have to supply and own 2 separate fleets. So what you would save on on what they're carting around in the back of the fuel tank, what you're gonna save you're gonna pay back on delivery fee, because you have pressurized versus non-pressurized.
We have to have gravity drops at
Thank you.
underground tanks.
You got it. It's on the right track. Okay, thank you.
So is the motion then to amend this
That's
with
all I'm into
not to
as
exceed?
moved to add not to exceed.
Sliding migration as an option.
That's the terminology
Did I
that
second?
my.
You did,
Yes,
Charlie.
I'll accept that.
That's the terminology that my people use. They may want you to explain what the hell is she talking about.
Any other discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Is there anything else?
ladder, stop.
But no crane came to deliver it like they said.
No. Yeah. They had strong guys then.
That's right. They had time to eat their Wheaties.
So not seeing any additional.
Kane, can I
Go ahead.
just in the public, just a shout out to the Moulton family. Recently we lost Paul Moulton, who was a huge supporter of town athletics and very committed to Farmington for a number of years. He was a proud member of the class of 1970. His wife went to school in this town, grew up in this town, his children all did, so he passed away after a long battle with Parkinson's recently. So just a shout out to the Moulton family tonight, if we could. Prayers and thoughts with you all.
Paul was a pillar of the Tiger Den. I think there's a spot reserved for the Bolton clan.
Do you have any other business in public? And so our next meeting is scheduled the 2nd, which is.
Oh, the other piece I am